Embracing the football scene on the Rock of Gibraltar with Adam Roberts and Steve Brown.
Well, good evening, welcome to the fourth episode of the Gibraltar Footie Show. I'm Steve Brown, and with us every single week is Adam Roberts. But this evening, we've actually got Dan Griffin. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic to have you on this week, and I believe that you were the brains behind starting off. Was it Football Gibraltar?
I guess you could say that. Yeah. I guess you could say as a founder. Yeah.
What was the thinking, Dan? What was the idea about creating Football Gibraltar?
Well, part of it was I was at school at the time doing my GCSEs, looking towards A levels and uni, and I realised I needed something to bolster up my UCAS form because I was planning to do sports journalism at uni, and also I noticed at the time there wasn't any online coverage, neither voluntarily or from the FA at the time either. So I thought I can fill a hole, improve my chances of going to uni, and give coverage that was needed, really.
Certainly. And I take it you managed to go to uni then?
Yes, I managed to do the 3 years of uni, graduated with sports journalism, so it paid off, really.
It did. And what do you think, someone like yourself who's into journalism, into broadcasting and that kind of thing, what do you think to the Gibraltar Footie Show? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's much needed. I mean, if one area that hasn't really been covered massively in terms of local football coverage is a podcast, so obviously this is a brilliant opportunity to fill a pretty big hole, and so far it's been done very well, so it's going superbly. I think it's what we need. Yeah,
and what are your thoughts on the season so far in the Gibraltar Football League?
It's been a very interesting season, I'll say the least. Obviously, Lincoln have come out strong as expected, but then elsewhere around the league has been shocks, has been upsets. Obviously, Europa losing their first 2 games was the biggest shock of the lot. But then there's been other teams like Gib United and Lions who've come out pretty strong, and so far after 4 games made it a really interesting league.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the league, and I think it's pretty, compared to other seasons, it's looking pretty wide open. With possibly 3, possibly 4 sides in the running.
Definitely, yeah. As mentioned before, we obviously Europa's very poor start has definitely opened it up from the beginning. I'd say there's a lot of teams who at least considers a chance of qualifying for Europe, which obviously for a lot of teams will be a first, and that'll be massive for them. So I think having that extra European spot has made the teams in the mid-tier at least strengthen enough to make the league a much more wide-open affair. Yeah,
and with the Football Gibraltar website and the Twitter pages and the Facebook pages, what kind of response have you had from the local football fans with the social media content?
I think it seems to be positive. Obviously, again, people appreciate the updates, especially those who have previously been based in Gibraltar and have had to move away. When then obviously it's very hard to keep up to date with the local league, obviously with a lack of wider coverage. I think people appreciate the fact that there's a dedicated football social media platform that consistently puts out quality information and quality articles, etc.
Because it certainly is quality. Is this something you do full time, or is it just a kind of a passion or an hobby?
It's always been a voluntary thing. As I have obviously between school, university, and my own job, this has always been a voluntary thing. But it's something I've enjoyed, so it's not really a job per se.
No, but looking at the content, looking at the professional content that is on there, I'm surprised that you've not managed to pick up any kind of sponsorship or advertising on the pages.
It's something we've looked into before, but it's surprisingly quite hard to get any relevant sponsorship to come in. People are always happy to read the content, enjoy the content, but they're not quite as eager to put money into it, which is a shame, really. And it's something that I think in all areas of local journalism could benefit from. Yeah,
certainly with the amount of money that is, coming into the game at the domestic level on the Rock, you would think that, social media content, advertising, sponsorship is something the clubs would be looking into.
You'd think so, but I think marketing is an area where a lot of the clubs are maybe catching up from. Obviously, on the pitch, they're building faster and faster. Maybe off the pitch, some clubs aren't quite there. For example, a lot of teams don't update their social media daily, for example, don't give match day coverage, which is a basic of any football team, really.
Yeah, so definitely.
They're catching up off the pitch at a slower pace than they are on the pitch.
Yeah, especially in the UK, it's seen as pretty much 50-50. You know, that what's created on the pitch is achieved mostly by what is done off the pitch with the social media, the advertising, the marketing of a club, which allows the manager to have a little bit more kind of disposable finances to be able to buy quality players.
Definitely, I think if anything, you see some of the best social media and some of the most forward-thinking clubs are actually some of the second division teams who seem to have taken up better than their first division counterparts, which is quite weird. You normally associate the biggest teams having the most resource and ability to produce consistently good social media, build their brand per se as a football club, and in turn make more money. But for whatever reason, the biggest clubs haven't quite grasped that yet.
Yeah, definitely. You know, as you said, the second division clubs, I kind of work closely with the Magpies, and they're pretty much, well, they're trying their best, and they're up there when it comes to the social media content. They have the match day program, which is a fantastic addition. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, they're the only club, as far as I'm aware, that do a match day program, which is pretty basic, as you think, for a football club. Even if it's just a 2-3 page preview of the game online before game, it's something that it helps people get more connected towards the team, understand who the players are, and become fans as a whole.
Yes, certainly. But I know you're joining us this week. Hopefully it'll be the first of many occasions that you'll join us on the Gibraltar Footie Show. But we're going to look at last week's results. We'll start in the second division. Some interesting performances and results there, Dan.
Oh, there were some massive ones. I think the first place to look at was Sunday's double header, which was two very contrasting games with two very interesting results. Obviously, Olympic versus Magpies was a battle between the two teams we predicted to be the top two in the league.
Yeah.
And they put on a very good game, but in the end of the day, Olympic's quality, with obviously ex-Gibraltar internationals, just about shone through at key times. And Magpies had their chances but couldn't take them and were kept in their game by their goalkeeper. But Olympic, when they had to, got the goals, and then there was no way back for Bruno's.
No. Well, I know that Tom Hull, he came in from the UK during the summer for the Magpies, and I believe Davy Wilson was away on vacation, so he had the assistant standing in. But it's not been the best of starts for Magpies, and they would have been hoping for possibly a better start than this, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. I think them and Olympic as well had a very mirroring start. They both started very slowly. Maybe a lot of changes has contributed to that. They've not really kicked on as quickly as they would like. And with the second division not being a long season, that could be quite fatal for a team's chances of going up. Already Bruno's probably looking at them thinking, well, we need to win the next 3 or 4 to put ourselves in a good position at the halfway mark, which is not an ideal place to be.
Yeah, and looking at the other game that took place on that Sunday evening, Cannons getting back to winning ways with an impressive 1-0 win against Angels FC.
That was quite a fascinating game for different reasons. It wasn't the highest quality game. It was not an easy watch, but Cannons were the better team across the 90 minutes plus. And it was a very cagey affair until it hit to injury time, where both teams just decided, well, we've got to win this, so they both threw everything towards it. Angels had what looked a very strong penalty shout, turned down about the 94th minute, and then a minute later, Cannons, who had been the better side against the previously unbeaten 100% Angels, scored of a header and won it, which was quite impressive really for Cannons. It makes that league a bit more wide open, which is good.
It does. When you're looking at the league table, you look at Cannons, Angels, and Boca Juniors, who also had a 1-0 win on the Wednesday evening against FC Hound Dogs. They've all got off to relatively good starts.
Definitely. I think as you look at it, there's about 4 or 5 teams who could possibly challenge for the title, and if not, the playoff with the second bottom team from the Premier. And it makes it a very hard league to call. I mean, our predictions obviously had Olympic first, Bruno second, but that could get completely thrown out of the window when you look at teams like Boca, teams like Angels and Cannons, who no one expected to be as good as they have been so far. Especially compared to say Leo, who gave a lot of big talk in the summer but haven't had the start at all.
No. And looking at the game this evening, I know that there's a game that kicked off at 6:15 this evening, FC Hound Dogs versus Europa Point.
Yep. Hound Dogs managed to catch them on the first weekend of the season, I believe it was, against Cannons actually, And for a very young team who obviously haven't quite got maybe not the experience of other teams' players, they put on a very good performance, and they will spring a few surprises. I mean, obviously Boca only could beat them 1-0. I think they will take points off the top teams, and it's good experience for a very young local team. And if any of those kids start impressing, they might find themselves moving on to bigger clubs before long.
Yeah, I was reading something on your pages, I think it was your pages this afternoon, news coming out of America about a consortium interested in taking over Europa Point. Do you know anything else more about that?
Well, the club announced it just before their game today, that American duo have taken over a controlling stake in the club. It's something to do with Silicon Valley, something along the lines.
Right.
It's very hard to keep track of all the ownership changes in the local league, but it's probably investment that they need. Europa Point, they didn't quite recover from in the season of the Premier League. It was hard for them, and they probably need that little bit of investment to obviously, one, to challenge again for going back up, and two, for committing to obviously their plan, their stepping stone club plan, getting in good quality youngsters who in turn can move to bigger teams both locally and abroad.
Yeah,
so I think it'll help them, especially in a very, very competitive league.
Yeah, it'll certainly help them if the consortium are going to be able to bring some finances in the club, which of course gives the management team opportunities to go out and possibly sign some more acquisitions.
Definitely, obviously they've got to wait till January for a lot of it, which I think the January window will be very interesting for a lot of teams. But I think the second division, especially as teams realise what they need to do to push towards the so-called promised land, there might be some quite heavy transfer activity going on in the second tier.
Yeah, and just moving on to the Premier League, it's starting off on Wednesday evening with a 3-1 win for St Joseph's.
Yeah, I think it's a good win for St Joseph's. I mean, Phoenix so far have proven they're far from pushovers as the newly promoted side. They were far too good for the second division last year, but they've got a good team who have so far troubled their opponents that they've played. I think for Saints, it's a solid victory that they all would have needed, because obviously with teams like Gib United and Lions, even Mons Calpe around them, they need to make sure that they're winning these games against the so-called bottom half sides.
Yeah, and like you said, they've played 4, they've won the 3, just lost the 1, and 9 points, and in a pretty healthy position, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you expect Saints to be up and around there, challenging. Obviously, they've had the money coming from the Europa League this year. They'll have the experience that comes with that. So you'd expect them to be fighting for those top positions, and 3 wins from 4 is not a bad way to do it.
Yeah. Financially, Dan, what we're looking at for a place in the Europa League?
Obviously, it goes up every year as UEFA gets more and more money, but I think it's something like €150,000 for just taking part in the first round.
Brilliant.
Which is obviously big money for any local team, and that's just you can turn up, lose heavily both games, and still get a nice 6-figure sum. It's not bad, is it?
It's not bad at all. Not a bad afternoon's work really for 2 games, and as you say, 2 performances, and you're £150,000. That can keep a team going for at least a season.
Definitely, yeah. If you're sensible about it, you can use that money to build stronger and stronger, and then eventually try and get into the Champions League, which would be even bigger. Yeah.
Well, one team who have tried to build and it's not seemed to work for them, and of course the departure of Alan Buller, which was a big story last week on your news feeds and everyone else's. Links going down by 4-0 and saying goodbye to Alan. What did you make of that?
Well, I was quite surprised that after 4 games they'd sacked him. Maybe they'd taken some inspiration from Crystal Palace, who did the same thing in the English Premier League.
Yeah.
But it just did not work out for him at all. I mean, Alan himself would have known it was a challenge coming into Links, a team who at the time had very little, probably didn't have the financial strength compared to their competitors. But I think it's come in 4 games with 4 defeats and not scoring. It couldn't have gone any worse. And
no,
obviously you can't expect much when you're playing against Lincoln, but it's a unfortunate end for him. It'd be interesting to see whether he stays in Gib or maybe goes back abroad, because he's at a bit of a crossroads, I think, in his managerial career now. Well,
he had the opportunity, did he? Have several opportunities during the summer to maybe go abroad, but he decided to go with Links instead.
I believe so. There was never anything confirmed. I think there was a couple of non-league clubs in England who'd taken a look. Obviously, he's been been doing his coaching badges at St George's Park.
Yeah.
He's been working with some high level coaches and ex-footballers. So he's obviously got good connections within the game, and I believe he might have been offered a couple of jobs here and there, but maybe his heart was set on coming back to Gibraltar and working within the league.
Yeah. And another team who, not had the best of starts, but I've watched them from afar, and you probably watched quite a bit of them, Glasgow United. I know they didn't now the bottom, but they're putting some good performances in, aren't they?
They have been. They've been a little bit unlucky. I mean, watched them against Europa the other night, and they gave Europa a very stern test, especially when they got a goal back. They were probably the team that could have easily taken a point off last season's champions and were unlucky not to. I believe the same was against St George's as well. They were unlucky not to get anything against that. Sometimes you need that bit of luck. Maybe they need one game where they win when they maybe shouldn't have done, and that will help kickstart their season, because as it is, they've been a very unfortunate start for a team that's near the bottom.
Yeah, and Mons Kelpie up to 5th place now with a excellent 3-0 win against Manchester 62.
Yes, so they've done pretty well. I think they've obviously got investment from Mexico, and they've built together a nice little team. They've kept quite a few from last season. They've had a good start. I mean, last season they did very similar. They came in, they had a very good start to the season. I believe they would have been unbeaten had it not been for a homegrown player breach near the start of the year last season, and they're doing similar this year. I think they're obviously a good team. They're a good mid-table team who will again challenge the top teams, maybe have an outside push for that 3rd place in that Europa League spot. I'm not too surprised that they're doing well though.
And the big one of the weekend, which was a talking point for all the wrong reasons as well as the right reasons, was United versus Lions.
Yes, I mean, for neutral, in terms of pure football, it was a brilliant game. You had two teams who had very good starts to the seasons, who built quite exciting teams and played really good football. And especially at 2-1, it could have gone anyway. I mean, Lions could have easily equalised or maybe even gone on to 1, but Gibraltar United held out strong, got the late penalty, which secured a win, and you could tell how happy they were. They knew they'd been in the battle of Lions, and they knew how big that victory probably was for them. But as you mentioned, of course, the game was also in the spotlight for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, but we're going to be talking about that during the podcast this evening. But just going back just briefly to the Football Gibraltar page that you set up, how long ago did you start it up then, Dan?
That was in about March 2010, so it's about 7 years ago now, I think.
And in that time, it has gone from strength to strength with thousands of locals and people abroad following your every move on there.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when it first started, it was just a little WordPress blog that I kept up to date every few days when I could after school, and it's built from there. I mean, to the point where obviously when Gibraltar getting into UEFA was the big thing that just kick-started the growth of Football Gibraltar massively, because obviously the world's eyes suddenly turned on this new country coming into football.
Yeah.
And at the time, there was no other online coverage, so the only place they could go was Football Gibraltar. So I was in the right place at the right time, really, and so was the blog.
Yeah. What would you like to achieve from the blog and from the actual page? Where would you like to take it in possibly the next 7 years?
It's a hard one. Obviously, I'd like it to grow alongside the local game. Obviously, you want to explore as many different avenues as possible. I like to do a bit of video stuff, maybe video coverage of it. It's always a good place to go into. Obviously, this podcast is quite helpful. Maybe something we can look audio coverage as well, but it all depends on how the local game grows as well. If the game over here keeps growing and growing, I think naturally our coverage will grow with it, because it has to. Again, if the game stagnates over here and goes a bit backwards, it's going to be a bit harder for it to grow. So it depends on the teams, the players, and everything else. But I think it can definitely go bigger places and just get more attention, especially outside of Gibraltar.
Yeah, I think that's one of my fundamentals when I was setting up the podcast. I was looking at the possibilities. I was chatting to Adam about Football Gibraltar, about what you do on the Rock, and bringing the two together would be a fantastic idea.
Definitely, I mean, it's got the potential. I think if you can combine the two, you've got a very, very potent machine there, really. And you can produce consistently excellent coverage on a daily and weekly basis that just isn't being matched even by
No.
outlets that are being paid for their work, that can't produce that level of quality.
Correct. That was my main approach, is the fact that we can bring several different platforms, multimedia, digital and audio, all into one place. There's nothing to match it on the Rock.
No, there isn't at all. As much as I'd like there to be something that was, I can't see anything doing that, anyone else doing that in the near future. So it's up to us, really.
Yeah, it certainly is. But it's been a pleasure to chat to you. I'm sure we'll chat on many occasions during the season. But thanks for joining us, Dan, this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Adam, fantastic to chat to Dan then, and a very knowledgeable chap who came up with a fantastic idea to kickstart the Football Gibraltar, and it's just seemed to have gone from strength to strength.
Yeah, I never known he was behind it the whole time, and I was always in contact with Football Gibraltar when I was with 5.4, and we're always trying, but I actually never knew who was behind it. And then one day I asked, look, who is this? We've been speaking for ages, kind of, who is this? And then it ended up being Daniel, and someone we've been friends since we were in nursery, so imagine how that felt.
Yeah, well, there's several things to chat about this evening, and one of those I touched upon with Dan, and that was the game between Gibraltar United and Lions, and with the news coming out regarding allegations of racism.
Yeah, obviously that's something that puts a bit of a black mark on Gib United's win. I was informed that apparently something happened just after the about 30-minute mark. Something was obviously said. I think Bayo from Gib United committed a foul. Obviously, wasn't too happy with how the Lions guy went down, and for about 5 minutes, I'd say, he just went absolutely crazy. I've been watching the video back, trying to figure out what was happening. You could obviously hear Bayo telling the Lions guy, "Look, say it to me outside. Say it to me outside." I was thinking, what's he talking about? And then I was informed later on that apparently someone had called him nigger, or negro as it said in Spanish.
Yeah. And how many people were present to witness this?
I was speaking with Gib United after the game, and they were telling me that they just heard it quickly, and then all of a sudden 5 Lions players went together. So it was quite difficult to really realize, look, who said what. But I think there's been a few talks that apparently a few players have apologized to Bayo, but like I said, there's investigations underway from both clubs and the association, and it'll be quite interesting, to be honest, to find out what comes from this, because we're not as up to date on technology as the Premier League. With Premier League, you can't get away with anything because there's cameras on every on every angle.
Yeah.
But with Gibraltar, you're going by word of mouth, really, because the camera that we have recording the game is in the stands. It's not pitch side, so it's quite difficult to really find out who said what.
And of course, if you haven't got any witnesses on site, or you just can't, if you can't fully kind of prove that these words were said, then you haven't really got a leg to stand on, have you?
Yeah, exactly. Really, you're just going by what Bayo has said. Obviously, when you look at it, and he's been saying it a few times throughout the match, you kind of have an understanding that something did happen during that game. But like I said, he could say it to whoever, but then the guy comes around and says, "Look, what evidence have you got to say it was me?" You're looking at the GFA video, and if you look at the video once this podcast finished,
yeah,
it's very difficult to make out what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. I know that Lions were very quick to make a response to these claims, and said that they were going to do an internal inquiry into this as well.
Yeah, and hopefully they do, really. You look at a lot of clubs that say stuff like this, and to be totally honest with you, I think it's one of these that just
get swept under the carpet. Yeah.
Like we spoke about earlier this week when you were saying, do you think it'll just be swept under the carpet? And really, I hope it doesn't, but to be honest, I think it's just one of those that will.
Yeah, it's one of these things where racism is one of these, it's like an hot potato that nobody wants to take ownership of. And they just want to get rid of it because, for racism to be within your club, if it is in your club and these allegations are correct, it's not good for PR, and it's certainly not good for your football club moving forward, is it?
No, of course. Like, no one wants to be like shown
Be associated
as
with a
racist.
club, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And once someone finds out something, and then there's really the reputation of, like you said, the reputation of the club is
It's
intact,
tarnished,
really,
yeah.
because it's racism is a thing that UEFA always implement. It's always say no to racism, and if it comes out that this is true, then I think there'll be hell to pay.
Yeah, well, I was looking at some news footage from the past on before we came on here, because I knew that we were going to be chatting about this story. And I did see a report that they had a problem at Celtic once with one of their players, and he was banned for 7 games. Now, I don't know if the laws have changed within UEFA, but if he is found guilty, it could be a very, very long ban indeed.
Yeah, but with that, I think Gibraltar kind of have their own laws, you could say, where if we went the full by UEFA laws, I think we'd have a lot of problems. But as it's GFA and they have their own board, you could say, I think that's the word,
Yeah.
where they would get the punishment and they will compare it with UEFA rules and with what they think.
Yeah.
And really, 9 times out of 10, is what the GFA think best.
Well, the way that I would see this, it's not been proven yet. The player could be innocent, but if he is found guilty, the GFA could make an example of this player.
Yeah, of course.
And so that no one even contemplates doing this or saying this ever again.
Because you think about it, the betting scandal that happened in the summer, the 2 players got 5 years and 3 years, and would you say racism is worse than betting? If it is, then he's looking at more than 5 years, or would you say racism is less? It's one of those things where, like you said, it's a hot potato. No one really wants to deal with.
Well, me personally, I think it's equivalent. I think both of them are just as bad. If you're betting in football of any sort, it should be a lifetime ban. Full stop.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no room. There's no room for it.
No, of course, and I think there's betting in football that is still under investigation. I think it's supposed to be out, but I think that's kind of like being laid low. But it's so difficult to try and figure out what's going on.
But hopefully they'll come to some decision over the next week or so. But moving on to the next talking point, which certainly a talking point, and it had me talking, is well, that only can be mentioned as a bit shambolic from a referee.
It's just, I think it's another season, and it's again the referees are the big talking point in everything. Just to be totally honest with you, the fitness, it's all right being at UEFA fitness levels. It's great for the referees. That's a job I would never want to do because there's just too much pressure in it. But it's all right being able to pass UEFA fitness levels, etc., etc. But it's in game, you know what I mean? It's in game where the referees are supposed to be top ability, okay?
And have competence.
Make mistakes. Of course, everyone makes mistakes, but it's weekly mistakes, you know what I mean? It almost feels as if these referees are making mistakes and no one is telling them, look, you're making a mistake, like, sort it out, you know what I mean? Look, watch over your game, look at what's doing wrong, because it's just the big word in all of this is inconsistency, where I've realized that it's 1 week it's a foul, the next week it's the same but it's not a foul, then it's a foul in one ref's eyes and it's not a foul in the others, and you're almost unsure what to believe because in every game there's something different.
So what do you put that down to? Do you put that down to I know like you said, lack of consistency, but also referees putting their own slant on things, their own interpretation instead of going to the letter of the law?
Yeah, because I was watching the Lincoln Lynx game, and obviously Lincoln were winning 4-0. I think we were hitting injury time, and something happened, and it was a foul against Lynx, and Alan said something, and he gave his law, but it was different in the referees, and even Alan was a bit like, well, no, it's not actually, but I don't know if maybe when you're getting in game and the referee's kind of seeing things differently or taking the rules as they want as the game goes on, but I just don't know what to say anymore. It's just coming a weekly problem, and you could speak to anyone. I'm not talking down to the refs, but the refereeing in Gibraltar is a massive problem. You can speak to anyone in game. I've spoken to foreigners, and they say the level of refereeing is poor to what they've been used to everywhere else in the world.
Yeah, it seems to me that the actual football league, as we know, a lot of players are paid wages. They have become professionals at that level of football. It seems though the refereeing standard isn't up to that same level.
No, at all. The players in Gibraltar are improving, the coaches are improving as well, but the referees are still stuck there. They're not moving. And let's be serious. The money in refereeing in Gibraltar is ridiculous. I get a few kind of like, not price tags, but they kind of give me what refereeing linesmen get per game, and it's a ridiculous amount of money. And these refs are getting 2, 3, 4 grand, maybe even more a season. But what good is that money if everyone is still complaining about your work? It's a bit ridiculous.
And as regards to the incident where an English player, I believe, almost got a yellow card due to the fact the referee was trying to speak to him in Spanish. What's that all about?
Yeah, Daniel was talking to me about it earlier, and he was just saying that I think the player in question was Scott Ritchie. I think he's Scottish, and the linesman was telling him stuff in Spanish, and he didn't know, so he wasn't sure what was going on, and he nearly booked him. And to be honest, that's not the first time that something like that's happened in Gib.
But I think that would have been very embarrassing for the referee. I think he probably took a bit of a rain check on that one and took a step back and realised that the report he would have to write after the game would leave him with egg on his face.
Yeah, I think anyone watching the game would have been a bit like, look, we're in Gibraltar. I don't want to sound a bit bad, but we're in Gibraltar. You should be talking English. That's how I see it anyway. If you're in Gib, you should be talking English. And to be going around games talking Spanish, it's wrong in my opinion.
It certainly is wrong. You know, I spent 8 years in the local Gibraltar regiment. Of course, Gibraltarian was spoken quite a lot, but during duties, it was English all the way.
Yeah, of course, because English is the main language here, and that's how it should be kept.
And to try and book a player or go in to book a player because he doesn't speak Spanish is almost borderline discrimination.
Yeah, of course. And then we look at all these problems where we don't want to be Spanish, etc., etc. Obviously, we don't want to bring politics into football, but looking at all this, we don't want to be Spanish, and then the referees nearly booked a defender because he's not speaking the same language as him. What is that? Literally, what is that?
Yeah. And another thing we were chatting about, just very brief, because we've got to move on to the interview that you did during the course of the week, but we're also talking about the fact that there's no referees in the junior levels of the game, which is absolutely shocking.
Ridiculous. All they're talking about, all this grassroots football, and the basic thing is we don't even have refs.
Which is total, this is a podcast, but it's total bollocks.
I know. I was speaking with Gibraltar United, obviously, you know that I do some work with them, so I was having a conversation before we went on air, and they were just telling me about all of the trouble they're having at the moment, because I know that Desi Curry he's doing a good job. He's doing the best he can with the resources he has, and there's just the level of refereeing is getting smaller. Less refs, more refs have gone abroad for university, and they haven't been able to bring as many as they wanted to. So I was speaking to Paul, and he was telling me that apparently the under 5 to under 16s, I think it was, the Desi has asked the coaches if they could referee the game. Like,
dear oh dear.
That's what it's come to, and I think it was the under 16s are being played with no linesmen.
And for a member of UEFA and FIFA to be doing that at grassroots level, where there's so much money coming into the game, is almost borderline third world.
And it's these kids that are gonna be taking the places of the Lee Casiados, the Roy Chipolinas and stuff, and what are they gonna learn from not playing with a referee? Or that is just a recipe for disaster.
Well, it is, and you'd be inclined if you were part of the GFA to be going into Spain, the local surrounding areas of Andalusia, and maybe doing a recruitment drive.
Yeah, I know that the referees at the moment they brought in a lot of Spanish referees, because I think it was 2-3 years ago we had a massive problem with the lack of referees, and it almost got better because we were bringing in all these ones from Spain, etc. But now it looks like we have that same problem where the seniors is getting the main look, where obviously look they've got the priority, they're not missing anything, and then as we're going down the youth, which I see should be as important, maybe there's not as much money as in seniors, but these guys are going to be taking over from those seniors, and when you see that they're missing refs and missing linesmen, it's a joke, really.
It is. Well, you did have a chance to catch up with someone in week. I believe it was a bit of a kind of a lucky encounter.
Yeah, on a brighter note, no, I think we could move on.
Move swiftly on, yeah.
Talking about youth, I had the pleasure of speaking with Glassys and Gibraltar under-17 keeper Christian Lopez. Obviously, we know the under-17s just got back from the Euro qualifiers. Maybe results they would have not wanted, but it's all a learning curve for them. I think they're at that stage where you need to make a decision. You need to make a decision if you're going to play football or you're going to go out with your friends on Friday nights. And it may sound a bit weird, but I could feel the emotion in the way Christian was talking to me. I could feel that there's not enough resources for him to be able to take it that one step further. And it's now that he's at that gap where what can he do? Because he's not going to be looking at reserves. Was the team he's in would have bought a keeper, a second keeper, and a first keeper. So he's just sitting as number third, and he may get a look in here and there, but that's not going to help his development.
No, that's where you need, maybe the GFA partnering up with clubs in the UK or in Spain or maybe Portugal, and having some of these lads go out to, and join up with academies.
Yeah, something like that needs to happen. I was speaking with Christian. He was telling me that he wants to play in Spain, because he knows the level of competitiveness there is next level. You look at Gibraltar, and you're just getting tired. I'm looking at the results from last season, and they're winning like 10-0, 15-0, 9-0.
Yeah.
What does a 16-year-old kid learn from that? Because I think England won the under-17s, and obviously I'm not comparing Gib to England. That's ridiculous. But there's no reason why we can't get to that level of competitiveness where we need to give these kids an ultimatum. Look, this is what you need. It's either football, and you can maybe one day be like these players in England now winning the World Cup, or you're just going to be playing this for fun, not really learning anything, and just getting drunk on a Friday, turning up on a Saturday morning, winning 15-0, and then going home and doing it all again the weekend after.
But what happens for me personally, I'm a big fan of grassroots, as you know. That's one of the reasons why I set up the podcast in the first place. But for me, there's got to be some assistance from the GFA in order to create pathways for the stars of the future. People like him who are getting frustrated about playing at this level of football. There's got to be a pathway or some kind of maybe stepping stone approach to players venturing forward and becoming full internationals, hopefully.
Yeah, if you look at it, to be honest, I think the players shouldn't be going into reserves. People like Christian, who they shouldn't be wanting to play in reserves, because let's be real, I've seen it. The level in the reserves is not very good.
No,
there should be a pathway. Look, you're 17. Let's go off to second division. Get yourself playing in second division week in, week out, and then look, you're impressing. Let's move up. Let's move up a rank. That should be the pathway to them going to the top. Because if you look at it, he's 17. His club have said he's gonna play in reserves, but what good is reserves really? Like, I don't see it. The reserves in our league isn't like the reserves in England, where you're gonna be getting a good game because you're playing against Liverpool reserves, where the teams are solid from the bottom up. But if you're looking at, you're playing reserves against Lincoln and Lions, you're playing against kids your own age, and for that, you might as well, it's like playing another under-17 game.
It is, and I'd like to see some sort of, maybe some of the top players or some of the top 15, 20 players who have been earmarked by the coaches on the Rock, maybe receiving scholarships which would enable them to finance and move away and get some experience.
Yeah, there's loads of things GFA need to look at, and I think instead of looking at the seniors, I think we need to, like you said, pathways. We need to be, there's youngsters out there who do want to play, but they're not given the opportunity to.
You've got to be proactive.
Players. Exactly, and we need to help those players going forward.
You're listening to the Gibraltar Footie Show with Adam Roberts and Steve Brown.
Today we welcome Glaciers United and Gibraltar under-17 international goalkeeper Christian Lopez to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you've just come back from the under-17 Euro qualifiers. Quite some heavy defeats. How did that campaign go?
Well, not as we hoped, that's for sure. Because went there thinking we could actually show something against hard teams, show that Gib have what it takes to play against hard teams, and clearly we didn't really show that.
You're saying you don't really show that. In what way would you say? In what way would you say that?
Mainly off the pitch, we didn't show it. Well, players wise, like off the pitch, it wasn't the massive difference between us and other countries. Level wise, completely different as well. On the pitch, overall, we're far from where we're supposed to be.
You were saying stuff like you're far from getting there. In what way are you far? Would you say that the level where you're at now is just not good enough?
No, the level in Gib is not good enough, nowhere near good enough. And it's a shame because there's a lot of good players in Gib who could possibly be at that level, but because of the level Gib have in the youth leagues, we just don't get enough. Like, it's not where we're supposed to be playing at if we want to go and we want to get further.
Yeah, because it's quite difficult. Because in your league at the moment, there's only 4 teams, and they're all Gibraltarian, so you don't really get in that level of competitiveness which you want to progress as a player.
4 teams isn't enough, nowhere near enough to take some players to a Euro qualifiers and expect a big performance. Like, we could give all we have and all stuff, but it's not something what we should be looking at. We should be looking at every team that's in the seniors, that's in the Premier, to be having a youth team and a youth system and a proper fixed youth system.
So how long have you been with the under-17s now for?
I've been since last maybe January, for around a year and a half, I think.
Because you had that, you were playing against Armenia in a development tournament.
Yeah, that was in around January, I think it was, or April, around that. I think it was April. We went to Cyprus and we played Cyprus, Armenia and Wales. I played against Armenia and we only lost 1-0. And for me, that tournament showed our level as in Gib. We only lost 1-0 to Armenia, 2-0 to Wales, and 4-0 to Cyprus, who came first in the development tournament. And for me, that was the best squad of players I've seen ever at a youth system. And like we gave it all we could, and we showed that we are at a good level. Some players and some ages. But some other players and some other ages in Gib aren't at that level. And especially in my league, where there's only 4 teams, you can't get to that level to play in a Euro qualifiers or a development tournament and expect something good.
Which would you say is the hardest team you've come across so far?
The hardest team I've come across that I've played is obviously Serbia. We lost 7-0 in this tournament, this Euros. But for me, the best team that I saw play football was probably Cyprus. I didn't play against them.
Well, the hell was, yeah. You look how Cyprus, the senior team, did against us when we just lost 2-1. I guess it's quite weird when you look at it. You would expect, if the seniors aren't very good, you would expect the youth to be not that much better. But
Against the seniors, I think that was really unlucky. It was. I think we could have easily taken off points because I don't think we could have got the win, but I think we could have easily got the point. But against, I think the youth system in Gib, they aren't far off, but there are some points where we are, off the pitch. I think we are far off. I don't think on the pitch. I think some players are at that level. Then off the pitch we aren't.
yeah, because I've been reading up on a few articles about youth football. You look at the England under 17s or under 19s, how they just won the World Cup, and if you look at it, they're at an age group now where you do have to make a decision. You have to make a decision to be in casemates on a Friday night or a football player. And would you say that there's a lot of players there that want to make that decision now?
The difference between us and the likes of England or other countries is that England and other countries have hundreds, thousands to choose from, whereas Gib only have 30. So you can either the thing is with Gib is that if you don't take the 30 and you cut it down to the 18, some of those 18 might not show up to the training session. So then you have to call up the other players who you might want to call up, who you weren't going to call up for the 18, and maybe they wouldn't want to be selected because you didn't select them the first time. Whereas in England, you have hundreds, thousands of players to choose from, and they'll still be okay to get called up back, even if one of them can't go or whatever. Because at the end of the day, some players in Gib don't want to go out and expect to lose 7-0, whereas in England they all expect to either
To win,
progress
7-0,
or win.
Of course. So if you're looking at the seniors, how they've done in the World Cup qualifiers, is that somewhere where you want to be at some point?
That's easily where I want to be. That's where I want to play. I want to play in those kind of matches for the rest of my life. I want to focus all around football and just focus around Gib and the GFA. That's all I want to focus. And I think that I really want to play up there on that level. From since I was a kid all the way to now, I've only focused about football, nothing else. And that's where I want to focus at till I stop playing.
If we move over to domestic football, this summer you moved to Glacis from Lincoln.
Yeah.
Why the move?
The move mainly came from the league, because the GFA had changed the style of the league. So my team would stay in the same league as last year, and last year my team conceded 2 goals and we scored over, I think it was 100 or something like that. And I wasn't even the keeper when they scored the 2 goals. I was injured at the time, so I basically didn't concede for a whole year, a whole season, and that just bored me. So I had to either go abroad to Spain or somewhere else, or just go and play for another team that would probably not score as many many goals as we did last year, or we'd probably concede a lot more as well. And I think that I've made the right choice, to be honest, in not staying in the same league, because I got bored last year playing football in that league. I get bored waking up at 9 in the morning when it's cold to go win 15-0 and I wouldn't even make a save. So, yeah.
Yes, obviously once you get bored of football, then you want to stop going training, and I think that's where maybe a lot of your players kind of like drop out and lose interest.
And that's what happened with some of our players. Some of our players have lost interest still playing, but they play because maybe their parents make them play, or their parents want to keep them in, not because they really want to play. Because at the end of the day, they have the same when we go out to play a match, they have the same mind as all of us because they don't really want to win the 15-0. They'd rather, this was the case in my team. They'd rather win 3-0, whereas a tight match, or 2-0, 2-1, or maybe lose sometimes. That rather than go and have an easy league and then get really no experience. So when we go out to tournaments like these, like the Euros and stuff, we don't really know what to come up against because we're so used to winning by like this big margin of goals. So when we go out there, it's a massive difference, massive shock to us when we lose, let's say 7-0 to Serbia, 10-0 to Norway, 6-0 to Greece.
Yeah, because when you're playing for Lincoln or you're playing for whoever, you're not used to losing. So when you do lose, it kind of it sets you back a bit.
It's that we're not ready to lose when we play against these teams. We're not. It's a massive difference to where we're supposed to be at. Because we've been 5 years already in UEFA, and obviously you can't do much, but it's a massive difference because players even they still lose interest in going out to these tournaments because they don't want to go to a tournament and lose 7-0. They'd rather stay in Gib and win the 15-0. Those are some players, but others don't want to. They don't even want to lose when we go. So it's a massive shock to us and massive difference, and we shouldn't be losing by this much.
So what are you hoping to achieve at Glasgow this season?
Hopefully, I'll get some time in reserves. Just play the fixtures that we have with under 18s, and hopefully maybe make my debut this year with the Premier.
So obviously you're 16 now. You're at an age group where, like I was telling you earlier, you've got to make that decision where you want to play football or you don't. What are you would you go abroad if the opportunity came about?
I'd go abroad first thing. If a club came to me that's abroad, I'd go, because I don't think the level that we have in Gib I don't think it's anywhere near where I want to play at. Not that I want to play in the Champions League, or I need to play in the Champions League or something like that. I just want to play somewhere where it's competitive and I know I'll progress, because there's no way I've progressed in a whole season last year without conceding and I'm making 5 saves in the whole season. I don't think I've progressed at all playing in a league like that. I think I'd progress more even if it's somewhere random where I can progress and where it's competitive. I think I'll be fine.
Well, thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Every kick, every shot, every goal, and every Thursday on the Gibraltar Footie Show.
Well, thanks again. I did say in the podcast, and I'll say it again, I would like to thank Christian for speaking to us. It's almost good that we can get these young kids speaking to us, because we're almost like the voice to the voiceless, you could say, maybe, where the youngsters don't have a chance. Sending a few tweets out here and there is not gonna get you out the crowd knowing what's going on. And now, if we can give these opportunities to these youngsters to preach what they want to say, this is the perfect platform for them.
Definitely, it was an excellent interview as well, Adam. And as you said, any up and coming players or any players or managers or fans want to join us on the podcast show, all they need to do is either get in touch via Twitter or on Facebook, and they can become part of the action, can't they?
Yep. So if you see me down the street or something, apart from maybe giving me a few tips for future podcasts, we'd like to hear from you, because I know that there's loads of people out there who'd love to just talk about football.
Yeah. And just to finish off very quickly, we'll do the predictions for this week, because there's a stack of games to get through. But we'll kick it all off in the second division. Give us your predictions for the second division this week. Well, looking at the games this week, starting with the second division, Adam, and I'm looking at the games, and I'm looking at Thursday, College 1975 versus Boca Juniors.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a one-sided game. I haven't seen College yet play, but I know that I'm looking at the class that Boca have and what I've seen from them this season. I think it should be quite a straightforward win for them.
Leo versus Olympic. How do you see that one going?
Leo haven't been as good as they would have wished for after all their summer signings and the way their summer planned out. But Olympic hopefully can crack on after their important win against Magpies and carry on pushing forward and catch up with the likes of Cannons and Europa Point.
Yeah, and talking of Magpies, they've got an hard game against a team who are really shining at the moment, and that's Cannons FC.
That should be an interesting game, really. I think Magpies I just don't know what's going on with them. Like they're definitely they lost in the reserves. Obviously, reserves in second division is something completely different. Even though if you're looking at the team's more or less ideal. The reserve team is the second division team. Let's be real, except part a few players. But I just don't know what is going on at that club, and something needs to happen if they want to go up, start moving up the table.
Yeah, and then College have their second game within a week, which is quite unknown of. But Europa Point versus College, how do you see that one?
I think that should be quite a tough game, really. I know I said Cannons and Boca is going to be a straightforward win, but looking how Europa Point are, and I know their team and College are quite similar with the players they played with each other. So I think that one is going to be quite tough for both teams.
Yeah, and a game moving on to the Premier Division, and a game that's actually being played tonight whilst we're doing this podcast is one at the bottom of the table, and that's Glasses versus Lynx.
Yeah, that kicks off in about 4 minutes if people
Yeah.
just in case people want to know. And I think looking at that game, Lynx will need to get something. They need to start picking up points now. And I was speaking just before Buller was sacked. Actually, the night Buller was sacked, I was being told that this Lynx team should be mid-table, and I don't know. It's very tough from what I've seen. I haven't seen anything that tells me they should be where Monsgalpe are, or where should Gib United or St. Joseph's, and I don't know what's quite going to happen there. But I think Glassies will maybe make a win 2-1 maybe.
And of course, Albert's taken over there. Is it Albert Parodi who's taken charge at Lynx?
Yeah, the main guy at Lynx has come back to take over his team once again. I think if anyone knows the players, he knows them best, and hopefully he can get the most out of them this evening and pick up their first win and maybe score that goal.
Yeah, and then tomorrow evening, the top of the table, Lynx, Lincoln, who've got off to a cracking start, as you would expect, won all 4 of their games with a 15 goal difference, 12 points on the board. They're up against Manchester 62.
Yeah, that should be a quite one-sided win. Lincoln have just been on another level this season. I think Julio kind of realised that what happened last season can't happen again.
Yeah.
He's brought in players, and they're all playing at 10 out of 10 every game. So I think it should be another one-sided win. I'm just hoping it's not a big win where Manchester are embarrassed.
Yeah. And I see this next one as the game of the weekend. I know we said it last weekend, but this game it's going to be a close affair. Gib United versus Mons Calpe.
Yeah, I've spoken with both sets of teams, and they're both 100% up for the game. I saw Jansen in town the other day, and he's just up for it. He knows that there's a lot on the line. He knows that a few of his former players will be on the pitch, and he'd just love to kind of bring Gib United down a peg, where Gib United are almost in cloud 9, where they're doing so well in the league, and I think Jansen would love to bring them back down to reality.
Yeah, and then finally on Saturday evening, Phoenix take on Europa, Europa not been the best of starts for them.
Yeah, I was told that their game against Glassies was again another poor performance, but I think they're just happy with getting that win. But it should be interesting to see how that game pans out. I know Phoenix are struggling with their injuries. They're quite low squad at the moment, so hopefully they can try and get something out of Saturday.
Yeah. Are you hoping to be at quite a few of them games this coming week?
Yeah, I took a break last weekend, but it's that's me done now for a few weeks. So I'm back at the stadium tomorrow for the weekend games.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you, as it always is, Adam. And we've got to say thank you as well to Dan Griffin for catching up this week as well, haven't we?
Yeah, thanks, Dan, man. He was filling in for me while I was away over the weekend, and like always, he did a great job. And I know that this won't be the first time he'll be on this podcast.
Yeah, well, every kick, every shot, every goal is on the podcast every single week. It's always a pleasure. And as we always finish, I'll see you next week, mate.
Yeah, see you next week, man. See you.
Embracing the football scene on the Rock of Gibraltar with